from Music for All and presented by Yamaha, welcome to Mind the Gap. And now, our hosts of Mind the Gap, Cameron Jenkins and Susan Smith.
Hello, and welcome to Mind the Gap, a webinar and podcast series focused on young and new teachers and those student teachers whose experiences have been and continue to be affected by the pandemic. My name is Susan Smith, and I'm an educational consultant for Music for All, an assistant professor in music education at Troy University in Troy, Alabama, and chair of the NAFME Collegiate Advisory Council. I have a passion for supporting young teachers and teachers-to-be, and I love that I get to do that on this webinar with my friend and colleague and brother, Cameron Jenkins, the human forklift. Cameron, welcome.
Thank you so much. Listen, I'm excited to be here. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have good conversation. Feels like the family dinner table. You know, everybody's together, and now we get to talk, music education, look into the future, and really unpack how do we add more diversity into music education. And I'm so excited for that conversation tonight. Listen, before we get started, I want my friends and my family to be able to introduce themselves, starting with my brother and my friend, Dr. Deemer. Come on in here, my friend. I want you to say hello, let everybody know who you are and where you're serving.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Rob Deemer. I teach composition at the State University of New York at Fredonia here in Western New York. In addition to that, I'm also the council chair for music composition with NAFME, and I am the director of the Institute for Composer Diversity.
I love it. I love it. You can hear Mississippi in my voice. And, I can't wait to get up there and spend some time with you there in New York. Listen, tonight we also have my brother and my friend, Dr. Wilson. Man, come on in here. Please say hello to everyone. Let them know where you're serving.
Man, excited to be here and be a part of this panel. My name is Chandler Wilson. I currently serve as an assistant professor of music education and the assistant director of athletic bands here at Florida State University. I've been working in education for a while, teaching young minds, and why we're here today to talk about diversity and helping them to understand the importance of it. So excited to be here.
I love it. I love it. I'm always on social media watching what Dr. Wilson is doing down there in Florida. And like, man, that's my hero. I'm so proud of him. Tonight, we also have my brother, my friend, Ayatey Shabazz, composer extraordinaire. Come on in and say hello to us.
Hi, I'm Ayatey Shabazz, and I'm a composer. I also do professional development for districts across the country. And I also score music for film, TV, commercials, documentaries, whatever has music, I'm sort of in the background, which I like, by the way. I'm a former educator. I still get to do clinic bands, which I really enjoy. I really want to give a shout out to Minnesota because they bring me up often. And so stay warm up there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Mississippi, I don't know about that kind of cold weather.
Nothing about it.
Absolutely. And tonight we're so glad and so thrilled to have my sister and my friend on here with us, Marie Douglas. Come on, composer extraordinaire, say hello to us.
Hey everybody, my name is Marie, of course, as Cameron so eloquently put. I'm Marie Douglas. I'm a composer. I do a lot of different forms of composition, just like Ayatey was saying. Music for film. I also do a lot of scoring for, from just transcribing things, arranging things from ensemble to ensemble, some live ensembles and things of that nature. I was recently on tour with Tiana Taylor and a couple of other R&B artists, LMA, and wrote music for them. And right now I'm at the University of Memphis getting my DMA in composition. Having a good time.
Awesome. There you go. So that means some long nights, some early mornings. I definitely get that. My sister and friend, Susan Smith, come on, it's time to get the party started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I love is that everyone's from such a diverse background, and we're all in music and music education, and all of you are composers, but you're from different parts of the country, and I know this is going to be a rich discussion this evening. So we're going to start with that word about diversity, and kind of in your own words, Marie, what does that word mean to you? What does diversity mean today?
Oh, hey there, Susan. It's so good to meet you, and I'm so excited to be here and talk with you. Well, to me, diversity means, it's like a broad spectrum of beliefs on display, backgrounds on display, cultures on display, and no other background is edging out the other, you know. Um, they're just all competently displayed, well displayed, uh, and nobody's speaking on behalf of anybody else unless somebody asks them to. you know um Everybody's seeking out, a resource from every walk of life. That's diversity for me.
That's great. I love that. I love that definition. Dr. Deemer, what are your thoughts on diversity?
Well, obviously, it's a huge term, and it can mean so many things for so many people. But I think to go off of what Marie mentioned, I think a lot of it is just to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to both experience uh, music and culture of their own and of people who are like them, as well as folks who aren't like them, right? So it whatever group you're talking about, they should have the experience to be able uh, to experience the voices and the artistic expressions of folks who aren't in the same group that they are, or especially for the groups that have been kind of, let's say, uh, ignored or held back over the decades, to give them a stronger voice these days. So it's more equitable and equal.
Fantastic. Dr. Wilson, I realized before we started talking that our two basketball teams played each other this week. I don't know if you're aware of that. Florida State
No,
and Troy.
no, I'm
No.
sure that game didn't happen. I don't. No.
It's unusual for a little school like Troy to play big Florida State and be successful, but don't hold that against me if you.
You okay?
So we're all talking all the time about diversity, and Cameron and I've talked a lot about how people talk a lot, but not a lot of people do things, or we highlight sometimes the negative. What are some successful things? What are some current success stories that you've been involved with, or you've seen, or how things are growing in our community in music education, Dr. Wilson?
Well, Susan, we're looking at success story with everybody here, right? You have, a variety of, experiences and backgrounds and sexualities and genders and things like that as well. And that's one of the biggest successes is we're getting a chance to talk about these, see individuals, highlight individuals that have this opportunity to do that. And another way that we also have these successes are, as Ayatey mentioned earlier, he does a lot of stuff in Minnesota. Now that's diversity within its sense. So he's traveling to Minnesota, area that's going to be different for him, an area where he's going to be different for them at the same time. And he's programming music. He's up there in front of the ensembles and clinicing groups as well. So, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's a very large spectrum of how it's been successful. And to piggyback just quickly on what Rob was mentioning about, having different representation of people of where they are, just even bringing different spins to those representations. For example, like Marie's music. Marie has a great piece that's been, hitting the waves, but it's about Atlanta. And I'm not from Atlanta, so I can't really experience Atlanta, but I can experience Atlanta through Marie's music. And that's really important to have those opportunities. So I think those success stories happen with having conversations like this, and then putting people like that in front of individuals to talk about it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I mentioned to Dr. Deemer recently, I can't look at a program that somebody puts on Facebook or social media without going, oh, there are a lot of great composers you could be looking at. They don't have to all be of one gender or color, and so I think that that's starting. I hope that that's starting to expand. I hope that people are starting to look in different places, and I think we're going to get to some of that in just a little bit. But Ayatey, what are some success stories maybe that you've come across recently?
Well, I've been thinking about this as you asked the question. And one of the reasons why I spoke of Minnesota, because they did something I've never heard of before. After the recent wake of George Floyd's death, they wanted to figure out what they could do to bring their communities together. And what they did was they started a commissioning project with composers that looked like me, that looked like George Floyd. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to pay us to do this thing, but they didn't know exactly how to bring the world together, but they knew that they could do something, and they did their little part. And when they called upon us to write these pieces for their state, for their bands, it was a consortium of many bands across the state that are programming and performing these pieces. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to reach out and say, "Hey, we apologize." Um, it wasn't for them to have to apologize for, because it wasn't them, but they wanted to do something, and that something was so beautiful. It's wow. I'm kind of getting emotional thinking about it. Just going through that process, and the piece Red Tails came out of that of mine, and it's because they wanted to do their own little part. And how can you put words to that sentiment that somebody reached out to you when they didn't have to? When most of the world, decided to close their eyes, there were a lot of people who decided to open up, but to actually put a foot forward, they did that. And that's one of the biggest things that's going to stick with me for a lifetime.
Well, Cameron, I think that that's exactly what you're about to talk about is how do we get more composers of color involved, and but commissioning is the perfect way to start it, right?
Absolutely. And I love that as a success story, and that generates ideas and conversations, and okay, what part of that can we implement in my area, maybe my association, or the group of band directors that I'm with, or maybe my own program. How can I implement that? One of the things I'm excited about is the new composers that are coming up. And Maria, I want to just ask you, my sister, my friend, how can we encourage our new and novice minority composers to jump on in there and break into this part of composing?
That's a real good question. I think it's a question that needs to be asked. I think it's a couple of things we could do. And, for one, it starts with just exposing people to, what they can even use these days. You got, I mean, I'm an educator as well. Sorry to make this part of my introduction, but I'm an educator as well. And in a lot of I've taught in mainly Title I situations. And they're not exposed in those situations. I come from a scenario like that as well. My background as a student. And so, I understand what it feels like to kind of want to be creative, but you don't think you have the tools to be creative. And so, exposing them to what they really have. Courses other than band, courses other than chorus, courses other than orchestra. Um, when I was teaching, I did implement, music technology courses because I felt like that was the thing that needed to be done. And the courses were very comprehensive. They included things like, of course, music industry, business, how to navigate that, theory, of course, music theory, electrical engineering, and then of course composition, just encouraging people to be, creative and using their right on their smartphones. We use free things mostly, and I made sure that legally they were able to use them and things like that. And like I said, in an environment like that, the second thing is encouraging students to improvise, encouraging to do form as jazz ensembles, musicians, laptop ensembles, anything. Look at your university, see what's going on, and see what the next best thing is. Next big thing is. I'm certain that it's going to be something along the lines of improvisation. If kids don't feel like they can improvise, that's that's tough to become a composer. You can't improvise.
Absolutely. You don't want to suffocate that creativity. You want to encourage it. You want to support it. You want to bring it out. And I love that, even with your free resources, you were talking about just looking and seeing what you can do to put that seed. Like that seed was placed in all of the composers that's on this call. Now, Susan, I'm not a composer, my friend. I can I can get in front of the group, but I admire all the composers who are with us tonight and those who are watching. But I'm excited that Maria is talking about getting them going and getting them started and keeping them encouraged. Ayate, the same question. What can we do to really encourage and lift up our new and novice minority composers?
To that's not a brief question for me because I look at from when I first got the bug to write music. It was in 1982, and the problem back then, well, actually, it was twofold. One, I had a couple of good directors that understood that I had a gift, but I was so young at that point. Where am I going with this? I'm in school, I'm in band, and but I wanted to write, and so they would throw these thematic scores at me and these floppy records. Some of you guys may not know what that is, but I know Susan does, and 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 so I would go home and I would listen to those, and there was nothing in the world mattered. Nothing, literally nothing. Eating, TV, going outside, playing with friends, none of that mattered. And so I would get my horn and play with these scores and these recordings. And that was my foray into enhancing not only my playing, but my understanding of how music on paper works. The problem I had was exposure, getting it played. I would have a director say, "Oh yeah, that works. That doesn't work. Let's try this, and maybe let's look at your rhythms." And so you go through those motions, right? So once you get past that and you actually know what you're doing, um, being in an environment that will allow you to thrive. And a lot of times you can't pick your own environment, and that's sort of the problem. I look at two amazing composers that's coming up, young guys, Adrian Sims and Gerard Hall. These guys, they're on FJH. They need to come to their music, but that's another thing. But these guys, they were able to start young and to get their music played, and someone believed in them. And that's the hardest part, to get someone to, first of all, take you serious, and two, to take that next step, to believe in your work and see your future, and not to be discouraging. Um, and so a lot of times you have to really be your own cheerleader in the beginning to get people to cheerlead for you. But you have to have this savvy to go the mile. And I see some of these guys. See, the finale wasn't. We all wrote by hand, so we didn't have the advent of writing music and it playing back to you. Well, I had a Commodore 64, and it was 3-note polyphony, and that gave me a little something. But but what uh, uh, youngsters have today, I mean, they're out of the box, could be great composers with themselves, hand scores, hand over a mock up over to a conductor, and right then and there, if you want to play this piece or not. And I just encourage them to stay steadfast in your belief in yourself. And a lot of times, people say, "Oh, it's just believing yourself," but it's a lot more than that. It's a lot, and once you get tested, um, and someone uh, uh, give you a no, give you a hard no, or give you a look of no, how do you get past that and keep moving? And some of these kids now, they don't accept a no, and I would encourage them to keep not accepting no's or maybes, or waiting for an answer. You just keep doing, and eventually you'll get there. And a lot of these young guys, and I admire them because they are they're doing that. They're breaking molds and putting themselves in front of people. that may or may not have given them a chance, but they don't have an option because they're putting themselves there. So I say keep encouraging yourself to keep moving.
I love that. I love that. And it's a wake up call for all of us to find a young composer and to, see the champion in them and to say, hey, look, let me give your piece a try. Let me, bring it before my band. It just starts with that
Yeah.
one piece of success and it just multiplies and it continues. Rob, I want to come to you, my friend, and just learn from your experience and the work that you're doing. Let's say there's a band director that's listening or a choir director is saying, I want to program in a more diverse way. What are some missteps or some pitfalls that we need to be aware of?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, there are quite a few. So we'll at least get started on one, and we'll see what else pops up. One misstep that I've seen happen, and it's kind of more of a subtle misstep because you see more and more conductors and educators, both at the K-12 level, higher ed, and even at the professional level. They've really you find a lot of them really wanting to play music uh, by composers from underrepresented groups. The challenge is that they may hear about one or two different kinds of one or two composers, and they'll be like, okay, that's the one that I'm going to do. And then suddenly everybody is playing the same one or two pieces by the same one or two composers. And that's a real challenge to be like, okay, let's go past the point that you've like broken away from the traditional canon and then kind of force yourself to actually discover music that not everybody else is playing, which is the only, like, even when we were talking about diversity before, it's not just that you have one or two composers who are women or one or two composers who are Black. You have to be able to, and especially one or two composers who are Black and men. Oftentimes, and this we did an analysis of orchestral programming last year at the professional level. You saw this huge uptick in performances of Black composers, but when you dug a little bit deeper, almost all of them were men. And so then it's like, okay, that's great. You don't want to say that's a bad thing in and of itself, but let's make sure you're not forgetting other groups, right? And so you just want to be able to kind of be intentional about that and plan it out ahead of time rather than having it be kind of follow the leader. And I think more and more teachers and conductors need to be a little brave on this and to find their own composers to champion and not just follow maybe one or two of the composers or conductors who've already done that and then just follow in their footsteps.
I love that. That is resonating with me tonight. Just finding that composer to champion, finding that new composer or somebody that may not be in the spotlight as strongly as someone else, and just really support them. I love that. Chandler, I'm coming to you, my brother, my friend. Same thing. We want to do better. We're trying to do better. What are some missteps we just need to be aware of?
Well, Rob kind of hit it on the head when it comes to playing with your friends play. You find that one person, everybody rides that wave, which is a success, story for that person, which is great because they're getting tons of exposure. But from the educational sense or from the conductor end, is more so, are you programming to your ensemble to give them the most diverse programmatic thing that you can give them? So if you have 5 or 6 pieces that sound the same, well, you may have to do some research to find it. And research is the biggest misstep, I think. And that's because they don't research deep enough, far enough, and long enough. So a lot of times if you're looking for something that can give this particular switch that you're looking for, and you want to happen to program a piece by somebody that may be minority or underrepresented, then maybe you just start with your programming that way first. You find something you like, then you can program around it, or you can go the opposite direction. I've been struggling with a program now with our university concert band that I'm doing in February. And just to be new for everybody, but the program is going to be like for the culture. But the thing is, everything can't be that one particular thing. So I'm trying to figure out best ways to manage this thing. Rather now, if it's not just the composer, maybe the person I bring in to conduct the piece now may be a part of that program. But it's just finding ways to do that. And research is a thing. And I understand that some things aren't just in, our faces. There are several websites that people can use nowadays. Or what you can do, the simplest thing we can do in the world is just ask questions, find somebody, look at programs online, look what somebody else played, look outside of your area. Like Rob mentioned, if your friends did it, then maybe find something different. And then what you can do is you can expose your friends to that people too, or that person in that group. And then in turn, we're now, sharing the wealth the best that we can. So research, I think, is the biggest misstep. I don't think we do it long enough, hard enough, or far enough.
Mm, I love
Yeah,
that.
Chandler kind of took us to our next question in terms of programming and kind of where do we start and how do we get there from with the end in mind. Marie, do you have any other suggestions as well when people are doing that research or resources to use?
Yeah, Chandler was just very right on point with that, but doing the work, going the extra mile, like he said, seeking out real humans and not a corporation to, just a large brand to buy from, looking for those smaller publishing companies that might be doing something. And just in general, conductors becoming lifelong learners, more experimental, going out of their comfort zone, and seeking out what will push the genre forward as opposed to, just kind of that comfort zone. And I think you can't go wrong if you do that.
Yeah, there are so many resources. And Rob, I'm just going to kind of throw it to you maybe to talk a little bit about some places that you would suggest people to look to start looking for some of those things. And then even, just by highlighting the success of some things that you all have been doing in terms of orchestral and wind lit programming, how that's really kind of changed things.
So, in terms of resources, obviously there's a lot of them out there, and it's been great to be able to see a bunch of folks, not just one group and not just from one area, but everybody kind of coming together in their own ways to be able to do that. Um, Obviously, I have to mention the Institute for Composer Diversity's resources at composerdiversity.com. We've got a lot of resources for wind band, orchestra, choir, art song, and we're currently putting together a chamber music database. But there are others as well. And We Were Heard was a great site, and that also does a similar type of thing. They also are encouraging folks to be able to record new works by composers from underrepresented groups, and putting those composers together with with ensembles at the high school and college level. But going back to what Chandler mentioned, I think a lot of it is just look at programs, and especially in the last 2 years, I would think there has been a kind of a sustained push, and I think you're finding everybody in the community are really kind of discovering new works that they had never heard of, which is the beautiful thing about this, that they're finding so many more musical voices that so many folks have not heard of, that it's kind of like a film that no one got to see, but now everybody gets to see it all at once. So I think a lot of it is just as folks have mentioned, check with your friends, see what they're doing, but then also just kind of go. Even I would think even like the CBDNA, they put out their programs that bands have done over the last few years, and there are a lot of good resources in that as well.
I love it. These resources, they not only help us in such a powerful way to be able to program wider, but also encourages us as we move forward. Technology is such a powerful thing. You can get on the internet and a couple of clicks of the mouse, and boom, the whole world is exposing you to what's possible for your ensemble. And Susan, I know you're excited. You're conducting and in front of a group and going, and I'm so proud of you and all the things that you're doing and that you have taken place. Uh, One of the things I'm curious about, because I learned this summer, and I have to say a thank you to Susan, also a thank you to Rob. The conversation that took place with NAFME this summer really helped me to be able to see, oh wow, look at the resources that are out there and how we can widen the conversation and how we can reach out and help other composers and get those composers in front of our students. I think that's absolutely powerful. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in there and say thank you to Susan and Rob for just enlightening me and lifting me up.
Well, the process with a composer, I had never had the opportunity to, because I just did this recently on my concert with a young composer here at Troy. He's written a couple of things for band and submitted it for our AMEA composers competition. And just to go through that process of him being able to be in the rehearsal and hear it live, and then him make some modifications based on what he heard, because it was a lot different than what he heard on the computer, right? Just going through that process back and forth, I think that that's really valuable for the composer and also for the conductor to have a little bit more meaning, and the ensemble all of a sudden they're a part of the process. And I think that we can lift people up around us all over. There are composers everywhere, in our schools, our universities. We just need to be the ones as conductors and educators to really lift them up and give them an opportunity.
I love that. Speaking of lift up, word of encouragement. I want to go to my brother, my friend Rob. Just what's the word of encouragement to our young composers or even our veteran composers? How can we lock arms, lift each other up, and just push music education forward? How can we do that?
Well, the first thing I would say is that if to the teachers, if you have students who you think might even possibly be interested in creating, whether or not it's composing for band or writing songs or writing hip hop or writing choral works or anything, electronic music, encourage them as much as possible. I would also say to the teachers themselves, the only way, and this is part of the challenge with uh, um, getting kids excited about composing, is that most teachers don't have much experience in composing. And that's because their teachers, when they went to college, they don't have much experience in composing, right? And so it's that gap that hopefully over time the more educators that embrace, taking a risk and trying to compose or arrange, as Maria mentioned earlier, all of those things help. And basically, it's just to be brave and not be afraid of just putting it out there.
I love that. I think we have enough time to hear everyone's encouragement. I want to go to my brother, my friend Chandler. Doc, what would you say? What is that word of encouragement to our profession?
Well, just to piggyback quickly off of what Rob just mentioned, teachers really trying to highlight and give your students opportunities to do it. My own personal thing, and it's not about us, but I started with arranging, but it was out of necessity because during our time, we would have to send the tape and dub the tape and get the tape to the dude 2 miles away. But if we needed a tune by Friday, that's not going to happen. So, friends, we just started arranging things like that. But our band director had an open policy with it, and he gave us opportunities to do it. So I would definitely encourage that for sure. But my biggest thing would be to start championing, composers, but also on all levels of work, which I think is the most important thing because the earlier a student can be exposed to diversity in composers. We're all writing, and I'm guilty of this quite often. Like I write a lot of fours, a lot of fives, a lot of threes, a lot of sixes, but that beginning band book grade one is that first place when we can start exposing people to who these individuals are and people that look like them or people that might not look like them. So I would encourage band directors, if they feel that is not enough in that area and where they are, then just champion them, get a group of friends together and start reaching out to people to, expose their students as much as they can.
I love that. That really, ties into that research piece you were encouraging us with earlier. You got to do your research, do your homework, turn over every stone and really find the composers out there. And I like the part too, because I taught middle school, the middle school team, they need a win, you know. And my good brother and friend, Dr. Jonathan Nelson, he's really looked at the middle school level and really tried to write for them, and I appreciate that. It's good to get them exposed often and early to just many different types of composers, and I love that. Brother Shabazz, Ayatey Shabazz, what would you say is your word of encouragement?
Yeah, I did a Colorado Bandmasters Association conference last year, and I presented on composers. I called it Hidden Figures. And as I'm going through the process of my presentation, I didn't speak about, these going to be composers that you don't normally program or may not know they exist. But that was along the lines. It was these composers that are right here in front of you that you can glance over, and you look past them, through them, around them, under them, over them, to find a piece you want to play. But these great pieces are standing in front of you. And so as once I presented this thing, Chandler, you were in that presentation as well. And afterwards, uh, I had directors coming up to me. Some of them were very emotional. I never thought I would see that, but someone like, where are these composers? I said, Deb Music, FJH. I started rattling off these composers. I mean, these companies, and these composers are right there. So if you know Brian Ballmajor, you should know Adrian Sims. But they glance over these people, and what I found out, that they saw them but didn't see them, and that was the thing that really scared some of these directors. Like, how did I miss that when they were standing right in front of me? How could I have seen this but didn't see that? Is it implicit bias? Is it something that it just didn't resonate with you? How do we get people to see us when we're standing right in front of them? And the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway of this, if we got to teach people to learn to look for us, that's a problem that we can't solve. That's not our issue. It's their issue. And I feel that sometimes that we come into, it's like a restaurant. We come into the restaurant after all the patrons are left. Now we can get served, but everyone else is gone. And so when we come in, we talk amongst ourselves, and we try to find these solutions, but there's no other people around us that really needs to hear what we're saying, because they affect what we do. Are you going to perform our music? Or you're not going to perform? Is there a reason why? Is there a reason why, hey, I really want to get this piece played at Midwest, but no one sees me because it's too important to take a chance on a composer that looks like me? I mean, these are the real challenges that we face every day. We try not to look at it that way, but this is what we see. So those people who are in those positions to make change should be right here beside us, so we could talk to them and they could talk to us to figure out what is it and why we are not seen and why we're not heard. And we're not heard is a great thing. At least, again, somebody's trying, but you can't be a hiccup. It's like a hit here, a hit there, but they never connect. And so this is why in 2022, we're still having this challenge of how do we incorporate ourselves with mainstream when we've been mainstream all
Mm. I love that ideal of locking arms, with one another all the way across the profession, and really lifting up, the conversation of programming or whatever the case may be, even bringing in, someone from a different background or underrepresented group. And I love that. I absolutely love that. My sister, my friend Marie, what would you say as a word of encouragement for everyone in our profession? How would you encourage us?
Um, Everybody has done so well thus far, but I guess just to try to come from another angle, uh, more research, which produces, and I mean research at in academia, using your resources to research and to produce media, scholarly articles and publications and textbooks, which spotlight the work of minority composers. I know a lot of the composers we learn about, just in our theory classes, don't, they're just so the same color, so the same gender, so the same exact background. And, so that would help. And then, just things that people can refer back to that, cement people and their works in history. Uh, and then the diversification of ensemble leaders, that's going to contribute to an outpour of different things being performed. There's only, so far you can get with everybody, or, the majority of people just being from the same background. It's just only so far you can go. And, that's the beauty of our country, and the beauty of really the world, is that we're all putting our heads together from different places, from different things.
I love
That's
that.
my encouragement.
I love it. I love every bit of it. Listen, my heart is full, and there is no way I could say thank you enough to all of our friends and family that came on tonight and just shared out of their hearts. And it's a conversation that doesn't need to take place in the back corner; it needs to take place on the main stage. And I'm so glad tonight that we were able to lift up this conversation. My sister, my friend Susan Smith, I'm gonna just turn it over to you to land the plane for us. But I have thoroughly enjoyed myself. My cup is full.
Oh, it's been great. You're usually the plane lander, but I have really enjoyed this. And the thing I've started to learn as I get a little bit older is that we just don't have to wait to make change. That we can have these kinds of conversations, and we can impact the people around us every day. And we can kind of lift those boats by kind of raising those waters, and have higher expectations for people around us, and not being afraid to have conversations like this. When we first started, everybody kind of was feeling everybody out, and wanting to know exactly kind of what was going to happen, because we're kind of programmed to be uncomfortable about having these kinds of conversations. But I think if we can model for young teachers that we need to be programming music of all kinds of folks, and encouraging composers, and having people compose in our classrooms. And we need help from y'all. We need help from composers as teachers to know how to do that and how to teach that, and encouraging young folks. So thank you all so much for having this conversation. If you know anything about Cameron and I, this is not the end of this conversation, because it's probably just the start of some project. Dr. Deemer probably as well, right? We all like to start projects, but thank you all for being with us tonight. Program people of different types of colors and backgrounds, and reach out to people. People want to mentor you. Dr. Wilson would love for you to email them and call them, and know more about his music, or he will refer you to 5 other young composers that you might not have heard their music. So we encourage you all to continue to do what you're doing, be great teachers, find those mentors, find those people that can give you that information, and continue to spread the word about music, and diversification of repertoire. And I'm rambling at this point. It's been great. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. We will be back with our next episode soon. We got a bunch of them coming out. So make sure you encourage those people around you, and be great teachers. See y'all.
Thank you.